This is a poem by John O'Donohue from a book, To Bless the Spaces Between Us, As a Child Enters the World. As I enter my new family, may they be delighted and know at how their kindness comes into blossom. Unknown to me and them, may I be exactly the one to restore in them, in their forlorn places, new vitality and promise. May the hearts of others hear again the music in the lost echoes of their neglected wonder. If my destiny is sheltered, may the grace of this privilege reach and bless the other infants who are destined for torn places. If my destiny is bleak, may I find in myself a secret stillness and tranquility beneath the turmoil. May my eyes never lose sight of why I came here, that I never be claimed by the falsity of fear or eat the bread of bitterness. In everything I do, think, feel, and say, may I allow the light of the world I am leaving to shine through and carry me home.
We have an additional reading this morning. It is a poem by Stanley Kunitz, and it's titled The Layers. And he lived to be something like 95, close to 100. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was, though some principle of being abides from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. I had occasion to be with my larger family yesterday, and one of my cousin's children, while looking at my youngest, turned to me and asked, "Do you remember me when I was that small?" Of course, I said. There are 4 of them, my twins, my brother's oldest child, and my cousin's youngest child, all born within a couple months of each other. And I remember them all learning to crawl and walk and talk in this little pack of loved children that burst into our family and totally changed its dynamics. My mother's side of my family is very big and has worked hard over decades to stay connected and involved with a deep sense of family belonging. So yes, I remember this child when he was just a little one, and at every stage of his young life. Time is a very funny thing. The days can feel so endlessly long, and the years so desperately short. I find it hard to square my memory of my oldest child as a baby, this one who made me a mother, with the almost teenager that lives in my house. And yet with that child and all the others, including my nephews and my cousins, I can remember their infancy with their red screaming faces and their toddlerhood when we could barely understand anything that they said. And I can see even now in their changing and maturing faces the children that they have been, the layers of who they are, who they were. But I find it much harder to remember my own movement through the layers of time, myself as an infant or toddler, even what my parents looked like back then, what my brother and cousins were like. I don't have concrete memories of my own life through the phases. I don't have moments clear as day fixed in time. I have wisps, impressions, feelings, a kind of heart knowledge of who we were and how we lived and loved, a sort of body and soul memory of the changes we have gone through as individuals, as beloved family. And I realized yesterday, looking around at these people who have known me the longest in this life, that what fills my heart so often when I look at them and others that I have loved dearly is my bone deep memory or knowledge or sense of their growth, their changes, their transformations. None of us stays the same forever. We transform, we change, we morph. Like animals that shed their skin and grow new, throughout our lives we find ourselves looking back, sometimes in wonder, sometimes in grief, sometimes in joy, and looking forward with excitement, with trepidation, aware that something different is arising. Throughout our lives, we are given opportunities to embrace new ways. These past days, many of our fellow humans have been marking Yom Kippur. These are the final days in a 10-day period known as the Days of Awe. The Days of Awe encompass Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, and then a time of turning, of seeking forgiveness, of repentance and change. The days between the New Year and Yom Kippur, also known as the Day of Atonement, are days for remembering what has been, for making amends, for asking for forgiveness. In these days, it is said that the books of life and death are open, and God is waiting to inscribe each of our names into one or the other. And as those books are open, we have a chance to choose how we want to step into the new year, how and who we want to be when those books close. These 10 days begin with celebrating, and they move to fasting and prayer, contemplation. On Rosh Hashanah itself, many observe a ritual of going to a body of water and casting pebbles or stones or crumbs, leaves, other small natural items from their pockets into the water. My mother remembers doing this with my grandfather on the banks of Lake Michigan in Chicago. The throwing of items into the water, known as tashlish, symbolizes the casting off of sin, the casting aside of the heavy things that weigh down our hearts. It's an annual ritual of letting go. And over a week later, there's a ritual prayer in the Yom Kippur service that is spoken collectively, so not I, but we, offering a communal annual way for all to apologize, to begin again. Whatever we have done as individuals, we are invited to participate in this time of repentance and speak collectively about our failures and our missteps, and to ask forgiveness. Yom Kippur acknowledges that we humans have a capacity to turn away from behaviors that don't serve us or serve each other, to turn toward kindness and compassion, to turn away from grudges and anger and turn toward joy, to turn away from fear and turn toward love. This day of apology and recommitment provides a chance for us to change. Yom Kippur is not about empty platitudes spoken in the synagogue. It's about moving into better relationship with the God we believe in, if we believe in one, and moving into better relationship with ourselves and the people around us. Because we're asked to actually go to our fellow humans and ask forgiveness. You don't get to just ask it from your God. You have to ask it from the people. We're asked to change our behaviors. It's a time for building up community and relationships by being honest and clear and envisioning and working towards something better. It is an annual opportunity to begin again, to recreate ourselves, to add more layers, Yom Kippur ritualizes and offers practice in repentance and repair, in forgiveness. Forgiveness is a very tricky thing. It isn't easy. When someone has hurt us, our anger makes sense. Our sense of injustice is real. The harm is not easily mended. I think it takes discipline, a particular spiritual and psychological positioning to be ready to forgive with a whole heart. And it may be that there are some things that are unforgivable. I'm not sure. Seeking forgiveness is also hard. Accepting responsibility for our behavior, owning our missteps, actually asking for forgiveness, aware that it may not be given, that's vulnerable. I think it takes discipline, a particular spiritual and psychological positioning, to be ready to really mean an apology. And our apologies don't end up meaning much unless we back them with changed behaviors. Now, whenever I think about forgiveness, always around this time of year, I think about that phrase that I'm guessing everyone has come across, forgive but don't forget. Yes, this is one we know. Now, I've always taken it to mean, even with an apology and even with forgiveness, don't you, the person who was wronged, forget, because you have to be on guard against being hurt or wronged in the same way again, right? Don't forget, especially if you aren't witnessing changed behaviors from the other party, right? I've always taken it to mean, don't forget because you have to protect yourself, right? And in many ways, that's fair. It is reasonable to not want to be hurt. It is reasonable to want to protect ourselves from harm, and we know the truth is that those who harm us may well be the ones to do it again. We have other expressions that bring that home. Maya Angelou is often credited with saying, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Have you heard this one before? Or the, like, fool me once, shame on you, but fool me twice, shame on me, right? I get why we take that phrase, don't forget, in this vein of self-protection. I was hurt and I'm going to do whatever it takes not to be hurt again. But I've begun to wonder if we can expand our understanding of this phrase, forgive and not forget, and perhaps see it as less about protection from initial or imagined offenders and more about how we want to grow ourselves. When we forgive someone, it has meaning for the person we're forgiving, absolutely, but it also has meaning for us. When we forgive with an open heart and truly mean it, which is to say, when we decide that we will not hold on to anger or a grudge, and we're not going to throw it back in someone's face later on in another argument, it can be liberating for us as well. Again, I want to be clear that I am not advocating forgiveness in every case, or forgiveness before we are truly ready to do so. But when we are ready, when it can be done, forgiveness can change us, can help us to step into a new phase of our own life and understanding. And perhaps the reason we don't want to forget is not because we must protect ourselves from being harmed again, but because we must prevent ourselves from becoming the ones who do harm. Perhaps the injunction not to forget is because we humans can all too easily become that which we have feared or been harmed by. Perhaps we must not forget so that we never fail to know harm when we see it, when we see others committing it, or when we see ourselves doing so. We offer explanations for harmful behaviors all the time. She was bullied when she was young, and so she became a bully, right? He was harmed by his parents, and now he harms his own children. That community was hurt and now must protect themselves at all costs. We do this not necessarily as a way to excuse behaviors, but rather, I think, as a way to try to understand them or comprehend them. And I have to say, it doesn't actually help me much to understand them, because I've never understood the idea that the freshman who gets his head swirlied in the toilet becomes the senior who then swirlies the freshman's head in the toilet. I don't get it. I intellectually understand about learned behaviors and the human capacity to develop patterns based on experience, about behavior born of fear. I do understand it up here. But like here, I just feel like it just doesn't have to be this way. My values teach me that there is another way, that we can, as individuals, as a culture, as communities of belonging, stop fear and trauma and anger from growing and becoming the thing which created the fear and the trauma and the anger at the outset. There's another way for us to move forward, transforming. We can grow with openness and honesty, with communication. We can heal and move through processes that are designed to give us clarity about who we want to become. To do this, we engage in these acts of seeking forgiveness and offering forgiveness, and we don't forget. We don't forget what was done because we want to be sure not to continue harm ourselves. And I think that part of doing that, and part of the lesson of the annual ritual of Yom Kippur, is to cultivate a spiritual, psychological, faith-filled position of openness, of understanding that others, just like us, shed their skin and grow new, of understanding that we will make mistakes, and we will change, and we'll try, and we'll grow. We cultivate a position of love that isn't martyrdom, but love that is vigilant against becoming the perpetrators of harm ourselves. We humans are at risk of defining ourselves by the harms and the slights that we have experienced, and these are real with real impacts. I promise you, I am not trying to discount the harm that we all have experienced in different ways. And also, we have to be careful not to become that which we have feared or hated or been mistreated by. Forgiving but not forgetting, when we turn the not forgetting toward ourselves, can help us avoid the cycles of harm. Forgiving ourselves and each other, remembering who we want to become, helps us to move through the layers of our lives, because there will be layers. Time passes. It's a truth we cannot avoid. Instead, we can embrace it, live into it, be open to it, come to it with love.